Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of CFO 4.0 and, of course, our Financial Transformation Live component. So today it's our Transformation Troubleshooter, and this is one of my favorite sessions because Neil and I get to talk what we would do. And I love working with Neil on these kind of things because for those of you who don't know, Neil is our head of delivery and transformation. So he is ex Big Four, ex transformation consultant, and we are going to talk through, I guess, situations that I've been asked about, but to give you guys some options for how you can deal with them. So we've got a series of snapshots, and some of them have been reworded so as to hide identities. I will just add that in. And some of them were also part of longer conversations. So I've just taken a snippet with context. So we are going to work through a series of questions and scenarios just to give you guys some advice on how we would approach implementation. And so, again, I'm going to skip over the introductions a little bit because if you're a regular to Financial Transformation Live, I really hope that you know that I am a managing director at ITAS and that we're a financial transformation consultancy that works with Sage Technologies, but also really proud to be Sage's Customer Success Partner of the Year. And we've won a number of other awards as well. But that's enough of the bragging about ITAS. Let's move on. I mentioned, obviously, Neil's experience at Big Four, but he's also done some work leading global financial shared services and has experience not just in traditional sort of consulting roles, but also around a lean transformation, operational and senior leadership as well. So he's always a great person to run scenarios by. We get sometimes very similar answers from you and I, Neil, but sometimes a little bit different as well. So let's move swiftly on to the first. Oh, before I do that, sorry, Meg has put in a slide to remind me. For those of you that missed last session, planning a successful project, I took you through things to think about pre-implementation and how to get the most out of your project, how to de-risk it, etc. So that is now available on demand. And here we go. Great. We can move swiftly on to the content for today's session because for once I've set myself a target that we are going to try and finish within the agreed timeframes, but we'll see how we go because me and Neil can talk a lot on the best of days. So we'll see how this plays through. So, of course, if you are listening to this live, please do ask if you've got any questions, any commentary, any additional scenarios that you want to consider either as part of this session or in future ones, then we'd love to hear it. And I will keep an eye on the messaging stream for those that are joining us live. And if you have questions afterwards as part of the podcast, please don't hesitate to reach out to me on LinkedIn. A lot of the material I get for these sessions is based on asks that I get, and it's a really good way for me to not only get inspiration, but hopefully help a few people along the journey as well. So our first scenario, Neil, for us to talk about. Hi, Hannah. We've just started looking at new systems, and conversation has already gone down the path of documenting thousands of requirements. Honestly, it just feels like busy work. Is there a simpler way to get to the right choice without writing a novel? Oh, so very cognizant of the fact, obviously, you come from that traditional consulting background. So I'm going to go to you first, Neil. What's your thoughts on this one?
Oh, wow. Thanks, Hannah. Hi, everybody. I'm glad we went to this one first. I was having a good look at this. I think there's a few things that we can do. And it is the most difficult thing on the planet to kind of just write down a list of the things that you want a solution to do. And be exhaustive and be complete. That is a really challenging thing to do, and I understand your frustration. A couple of things I can think of in terms of if there's particular parts or processes of your business, functional areas, teams, whatever it is that you're looking to improve. Solutions almost all bring their own best practice that is in line with widely accepted best practice, and there's probably a huge time-saving element to go out and find how would a particular solution address this particular functionality in the business. and do a gap fit assessments. So whether that be kind of a demo that kind of sparks a few ideas, or a deeper dive session into how does this fit with our organization. I think there's a very pragmatic, pragmatic way of addressing kind of understanding what you could get out of a system and how it can enhance your business and make life easier. If you're in a place where, let's say, things are frustrating, you're having a few firefights, or there's things that are not so great, document the pain points. Just capture particular pain points that are affecting your business. Maybe try to have a go at the root cause. If you can't get to the root cause, at least capture the symptoms and have that as part of a brief going into the same kind of gap fit analysis, I think. I know that certainly is a very fast way to move forward from my experience. So what do you think, Hannah?
So my challenge, and I have a real problem, and in the nicest way possible, with how everyone seems to approach requirement gathering when it comes outside of a consultancy. Not that I don't agree with the fact that people are spending time thinking about it, but in some instances they just tend to spend more time thinking about the requirements than they do actually implementing. And when you've got that imbalance, you've got to genuinely ask your question why. And I think a lot of it comes down to fear of getting the decision wrong, right? And I genuinely believe that requirements, like a list of massive requirements that you send off as part of an RFP, is brilliant if you know exactly what you want and you want to replicate what you've already got. I guess my challenge to everybody out there is it's very rare in this day and age that people are looking to replicate. What they're normally looking to do is to change and transform. And so, and as you said earlier, a lot of each software will do something similar, but maybe in a different way. So I think if I was engaged as a software independent consultant right now, I would actually approach it in a slightly different way. I would document and think about the areas of capability that I need at a top level, i.e. consolidation, etc. And then almost document each of the elements that impact those areas. So use cases like, do you need to, if you say like we need tax compliance as an area, it needs to suit these I need to be able to support these specific taxation requirements, i.e. sort of use case based versus literally I want to be able to log in and see this, because I think some of the requirements are so specific, it's really hard for any one software to meet them all. And then you're not making good choices around solution elements. And certainly, and it might just be the ones that I've received, but I've seen maybe one or two that were really good and top level and summary based, that encouraged us to work with that company as consultants to help them rethink their processes and gain the automation improvements. And I think that's what you should be looking for as a partner going into these kind of projects, is almost getting them to rethink, like saying, I need an AP process. What does best practice look like? Rather than it must have this, this, and this in the process, and it must look exactly like this. Does that make sense, Neil?
I think it does. I totally agree. If you're kind of shaping what are the outcomes that we've got to achieve, what's important to our business, it gives you a yardstick by which to assess how you should be working in the future.
Yeah, and I think, like, if you just say maybe had the top level requirements, we need to do this, and then had a briefing paper that you gave to your 3 or 5, because you shouldn't really be engaging with more than 3 or 4 partners at this kind of stage, because it's a lot of time wasted for everybody, let's be honest. So if you had a detailed briefing paper where they could understand the business structure, what they should be able to come back and say, this is what I would expect you to think about in terms of modules and capabilities for a business of your size and your industry. And then you can, do a consultation with each of the companies, record and transcribe it, share it with the other companies, And then you've got like everybody's on the same page and then can demonstrate a solution according to that. And for me, that's a lot better than going down a sort of a predefined matrix of, ticking boxes. Because I found this really interesting. When we've had them before, we've been overly honest, according to one consultant, is that if we don't perfectly tick a box, we've said why and where the gaps are. Whereas a lot of people gloss over the requirements that they put forwards as well. So there is a little bit about, you need to make sure that your partners are on the same page and aligned with you as much as anything else. And it's so easy to misinterpret a requirement. Have you seen any good instances where it's worked really well?
I think I have actually. Let's almost the reverse situation. I'll explain that momentarily. Where I've seen businesses that have challenged me to demonstrate that there's a better way of working, and they've been planning to systemize a process. They've gone through describing exactly how they want it to function, the features it must have. And then they were surprised when, after they'd done all that documentation and I'd reviewed it with them, I hadn't done the documentation. I was reviewing the process that they went through. What I pointed out to them was that they had exactly the same functionality 48 hours earlier in their business processes. And had they focused on what we're trying to achieve, what's the outcome that we're trying to achieve, it would have been recognized earlier. As an outcome, they avoided spending a 7-figure number on systems, but they took a lot of time defining system functionality, specification, flow, authorities, and missed the point about what we're trying to achieve is this business outcome. And they would have recognized that they could already do that elsewhere in their business.
So if we could rethink, right, and we can maybe ignore the way that everyone's always done it, because that, you and I, that's our favorite way to work. Let's be honest, Neil. We like to challenge. And as consultants, we hate hearing the phrase, well, that's the way we've always done it. So if we go back and think through where that requirements process come, a lot of the time it's come out of the traditional big ERP style implementations where somebody's putting SAP in across 5 continents, and it's just been scaled down to a small business scale, right? That's the reality. So I think what we're saying here is that if you're maybe a more agile business, right, and you need a new technology, and you don't necessarily want to spend 12 months putting together a requirements document and going through an assessment process, maybe the thing you need to think about is, what are the functional areas in your business that you need this system to cover? What are the outcomes that you want to achieve in those functional areas? Yeah. And then putting that out with enough detail around your business and how you currently operate in order for a couple of consultancies and or solution providers to come back and say, this is how we would suggest you approach this. Because I think there's a danger in that you're relying on whoever's putting that document together to understand the best way to do that process. And that for me is a really dangerous place. And actually the advantage, what you should be leveraging is the experience of the various vendors to say, this is how customers use this product when they're most successful. This is what we see. And then it's up to you then to decide whether that is a good fit for you as an organization, which I think is a much better way, because you're not then being trapped into just replicating. You're not just getting what you think you need, you're getting the best possible answer to the outcome that you're trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. Be interested to get feedback on this, guys. So whether you're listening to this live or on the podcast, I'd really welcome some input. And I've already decided that I'm going to flesh this out into a new framework and suggested approach as well. So watch this space, guys. We are going to cover this in more detail in a future session.
But maybe if I could, sorry, just on that, Hannah, build on what you were saying there. and maybe help people to frame their thinking. If you're really struggling to kind of define what systems do we need, what do we need them to do, maybe if you kind of take a step back and look at your business and say, okay, what aspects of our business do our customers pay us for? Where do we create value for them? What do they pay us to do better, faster, quicker? I said faster and quicker, easier, with richer features. What would they part with more money to do more volume or to do in a different way? And that's a set of requirements about making what we do to achieve this easier, better, faster, reliable. Then there's a set of things that you do in order to just operate your business, your payroll, paying your taxes, doing your reporting. Those things need to be done efficiently at lowest unit cost. Do them exactly the number of times that you want to do them, error-proof them, make them easier to do, faster to do. If you base decisions off the back of them, bring the timeline forward. That's the requirements around making those more efficient, faster, less cost. And then there's a whole load of things that you do in your business, and you'll be aghast at how much you do of this that nobody wants. You don't want it, and your customer doesn't want it. It's the rework, the waste, the error handling, the queries about things that should have been avoided, all of those things. Look to how you can eliminate those. What is it that's causing those that if you improve the processes and the systems around them would take those things away and eliminate them? And that might be a way of compartmentalizing what it is that you're looking for a partner to help you with.
Yeah, and I think, again, like, you might want to consider, how the approach might differ when it's a finance only implementation versus a business wide implementation. Because, like you say, I think the challenge with finance is very often they get lumbered with the outputs from other areas of the business. We talk the downstream challenges, right?
Yeah.
And so there is a genuine question about, those downstream challenges, are they critical? Because we have this conversation with customers a lot. There'll be things happening elsewhere in the business that are creating problems for finance. And part of transformation and change is actually challenging that and going, is that genuinely necessary for the business to be successful? And people understanding the cost of, I don't know, changing contract terms or putting in a new payment method or plan or whatever. And I do think that's really important as well, is making sure you're simplifying, rather than just automating, because it's, you can spend a lot of time automating things when actually what you need to do is simplify before you automate. So that's, sorry, slight tangent, but kind of you inspired me there, Neil, to sort of expand on that.
Glad to help.
Brilliant. Right. Any other thoughts on this, Neil, before we move on?
No, I promise that's it. We said we wouldn't overrun, and we're already head that way.
I think we're going to do it anyway. So I'm going to aim for 3 of the 5 questions for us to get through, but we'll see how we go. So this one was interesting. So, and it does come up a lot. New system's nearly ready, but our old data is a mess. The team is arguing about whether to stop until it's fixed or just push ahead. What would you do? Ooh, okay. It depends. I'm going to be a consultant here, right? I guess I guess I'm just going to get my head, my initial reaction out of the way, Neil, and then I'll come to you. But my initial reaction is try not to put anything into a new, pretty clean system that you're not wanting in there permanently, would be my first reaction. And you need to decide what is actually essential for your new system, because I do find people try to pull a lot of ancient history, shall we say, that doesn't add value into their old system. So if it's not correct, then why would you spend the time pulling it in the first place? I guess so. That's my initial reaction. Neil, what's yours?
Oh, I'm desperately trying to shake off the old database management systems background. I wholeheartedly agree. I think we all know the phrase CISO. I won't expand on that. I think we all know what that is.
Well, I think you need to define it, because a lot of people may not, Neil. Please don't, we have to shout about acronyms.
Yeah, so if we put bad information into a system, it's going to give us bad results, basically. And in finance, there's some areas of exposure where, for example, duplicate supplier records could end up with duplicate invoice processing and duplicate payments going out the door. There are risks that the business encounters as a result of having data in not a clean shape. I think alongside housekeeping and user conventions around data naming, we always do need a sense of trapping where those exposures exist. So we could say, oh yeah, let the data go in with the duplicates it has, and what we'll do is we'll try to trap it at invoice posting, or we'll try to trap it when we're doing a payment run. I think we should be doing those things anyway, but let's not give ourselves an avoidable volume to trap. My every instinct is to try to clean up the data as much as possible in advance of moving to your new system. If timelines and business pressures are such that you're almost forced to accept the current situation and take some of that poor data in, then please do have a cleanup immediately, as soon as possible, to get that data into good shape, and think about what would be the gatekeeper processes that we could have in place in terms of controls to detect the risks associated with that poor data. That's probably a good exercise, regardless of which approach you take. It will be a good detective control. There are some fault tolerant approaches to how data can be handled to take into account that ultimately we're reliant upon a human. But my advice is to kind of go for the clean data approach as soon as possible.
Yeah, so I think fundamentally, if we think about it, we have three options, right? We pause the project, we go ahead with a partial but semi-clean data set, or we crack on with the bad data. My answer is cracking on with bad data is just a recipe of disaster unless you've got a lot of resource to clean it up. So personally, I think you need to rationalize your data set that you're pulling across and then assess how easy it is to clean that up. You also might want to consider things like suppliers, right? What's the damage in entering them at point of entering the invoice and getting it clean that way? Because then I would hope that your new system has some kind of validation procedures around that side of things. I know it's going to make the go live process longer and more painful, but then that's something that you need to weigh up versus the delay and whether you have the capacity. And I do think the partial data set is probably better. Can you get 70% of your suppliers in clean? Do some basic Excel validation based on multiple variables, for instance. So for instance, the suppliers, dedupe based on VAT codes, postcodes, and things like that. And then, various different pieces that you can try and catch them. And then at that point, you can, because not being funny, if a supplier's got a different postcode and a different VAT number and a different name, then they're probably a different supplier in most instances. You'd have to be pretty bad. And then have a validation, a way of validating that data, say that 30 days post, where you can run a list of all suppliers that haven't been used and then validate those potentially. So I feel like there's always a way around it. It just may not be the answer that somebody's looking for. And if you're doing a massive historical data migration, in my personal opinion, you need to rethink that anyway, because that should have its own project plan, because it has a number of challenges with that as an approach. So further thoughts, Neil?
I think everything you said, I think is absolutely spot on, Hannah. What I would add to that is that you might get a pleasant surprise in if you put some resource into cleaning the data, you might find that you regain that resource consumption in using the system. So if we've got unclear data conventions, somebody trying to find a particular supplier and finding multiple records and then asking about which one should I be using might take up more time than cleaning up the data collectively in your business. So there might be a little bit of a false economy about we'll leave the cleaning up till later. The economy might come straight away by getting clean data that is clear on how it can be used in the business. And there's the old exercises in shape, sort, shine. Kind of you can more readily find the thing you're looking for if everything's organized in a particular standard way. And that's true of data records. If they're following conventions, your system will become more usable for the users. So I think you'll find that you get back the investment very quickly.
Absolutely. And there is a lot around how we think through the process of entering data, and there's a lot to be done around validation there. So we are rapidly running out of time, Neil. So I'm going to quickly move us on to our last and final question. We've had so many projects over the last few years that people have stopped paying attention. Every time we announce something new, the reaction is basically eye rolling. How do we get people to take this seriously and join in? Over to you, Neil. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one.
So, I love referring to John Cotter when it comes to transformation projects. I think the key thing here is we're facing obviously a situation where there's change fatigue. Every business hits that at some point, and maybe we have some thoughts about what is it about the changes that causes eye rolling. I'd say that a first piece around it that we need to think about is there a compelling reason for the change? Is there a meaningful outcome that people can align behind? And is it contextualized into their day-to-day jobs? So if there's a sort of, we're going to change our finance system and we're going to do it within 4 months and it's going to be great, is the message, I can imagine that would cause eye rolling. If it's we're going to change our finance system and the benefit to our team is that there are fewer steps in this piece, we're taking away the manual effort in reconciliations over here, statement processing from the bank is going to be automated. We'll have more time to get involved in producing reports that help the leadership take good decisions, and we'll have the right tagging against all of our costs so that we can run really good cost center budgets, and we can start acting as business partners rather than accountants just in the back room. That's a far more compelling picture for people to see themselves being part of the story. And I really think contextualizing, whether it be a change program or whether it be just the day-to-day direction a business takes, contextualizing what you're trying to achieve to the day-to-day jobs of individuals is a real part of bringing them on board.
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot to be said. So I'm actually going to save this question around because I'm very aware we have now completely run out of time and we are trying to stick to our timing budget for this session. But thank you guys all for listening into this episode of transformation troubleshooter. We have a number of questions to cover on our next session, but if you have a question you'd like us to answer, please send it to the email address on the screen, hannah.munro@itassolutions.co.uk. And we do have a session upcoming called Stop Shopping, Start Transforming, all about helping you streamline that software selection process. So I do hope you can join us that future one. So a massive thank you to Neil for joining me today. And as always, lovely to have your advice. If you're looking for a new solution, perhaps a new partner, then please do look to explore our website, www.itassolutions.co.uk. We've got a Which Sage Product is Right for You quiz that you can take part in on that. We've got planning a successful project and how to avoid some of the mistakes and challenges that we've talked about before. And of course, you can explore and learn more about Sage's products. So thank you again, Neil, for joining us. Thank you to our listeners for getting involved and inspiring this podcast. And we'll see you next time on Financial Transformation Live.
Thanks, Hannah. Goodbye, everybody.